Alright guys, welcome to our last episode for season 1, the Young Catalyst Conversations. Today I'm your host, Kanyam Goto, and I have a co-host as well.
I'm Agwini Mavovana,
yes.
And I do content at TYC.
Absolutely. So today we are just basically having a recap, a wide conversation around all the conversations that we've had. So we have different representatives on the panel from the different conversations that we've had, and they will introduce themselves with the conversation that they were a part of. Quickly.
I'm London Plazo, and I was part of the conversation regarding Black women experiences in corporate.
I'm Kisenseng Jackson Mahlaba, and I was involved with this show when we did Health.
Yes.
And I'm Farai Mubayua, and I was involved in the conversation that looked at activism.
Yes, and then I am Kanyam Goto, as I said, and I was involved in the Gay Men's Experiences in South Africa conversation. And then another conversation that is not represented on this panel, unfortunately, is the SMME and financing that was hosted by the other Kanya in the team. But we'll just touch on that slightly or a little during the conversation that we're going to have. So the first conversation I just want us to talk on is the activism conversation with Farai, who has an organization called Africa Matters, which is all about activism, basically. So we touched on a couple of things there. We touched on being a keyboard warrior, and then we also, being a keyboard warrior, we mean people who basically just tweet. Their activism is based on social media. And then we also spoke about, living out activism. We spoke on the Nomzamo Bata conversation and debate in terms of her being on Glamour magazine and being the activist that was very popular last year. And it's so interesting because it's like a full circle moment now, because Nomzamo once again comes up because she took a photo with Atama Fukate. And I'm gonna go to Farai. I'm not gonna ask her to comment on that, but I wanna ask her, for her, what is the definition of an activist and how should it be lived out from your perspective?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much for the question. I think that the definition of an activism is in the word itself. It's someone who chooses to act against injustice.
Yeah.
And I think it's being consistent in that action against injustice. And when we spoke the last time, I emphasized the fact that so many of us today choose to be keyboard warriors, which means we sit behind our computer screens or our cell phones and we want to use social media to try and achieve social justice. And I think that is important because social media, like Dr. Shakira said, is something that is essential to us. And it's a very powerful tool that we can use in today's society.
Yeah.
I mean, you even saw that in Zoom. The internet was shut down so that social media activists and different activists weren't able to mobilize. But while it's important, we can't limit our action to social media, because the world will only change if we actually use tools available to us on the internet, but also show it in our everyday lives.
Absolutely.
So we need to wake up every day and decide, what steps are you taking? And I think a really important conversation I had with a few friends years ago was this idea of, if there is a social justice movement, we don't believe in the word allyship. Because an ally can wake up one day and say, I'm an ally to LGBT rights,
yes,
and then do homophobic stuff anyway.
Yes.
Yes. But if you say you're an accomplice, it means you have to wake up every single day and recognize the fact that I want to fight against injustices. And that's an everyday act that you have to commit yourself to. And it means that noticing your behavior, noticing how you talk to others, noticing what you prioritize, what you comment on, what you don't. And I think that the more of us that choose to become accomplices to different movements, then the more society will change.
Yeah. Should there be a level of grace applied to activists though? I know it's a tough question, but should there be a level of grace applied to someone? Anybody can answer this, doesn't have to be Farai. But should there be a level of grace? Because yes, you are an activist, this is what you stand for. And the last conversation we spoke about how intersectional that should be, in terms of you can't stand for, anti-racism, but you're not pro, ending the homophobia, for example. So should there be a grace period for someone who's still maybe trying to unlearn their unactivist natures, but is actually or calls themselves an activist? This is for anyone. Am I going?
I think that we should be kind to people who are still unlearning, right?
Yeah.
And in us being kind to them, there also must be evidence that they are trying to change.
Yeah.
Right? So with the Nomzama incident, I'll specifically refer to that because it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
No, actually with the Kevin Hart incident. Let's
Yes.
put that. Kevin Hart 7-8 years ago releases tweets about homophobic slurs and just problematic tweets, and he then
In his personal capacity or as a comedian, or it doesn't matter?
In his personal capacity and in some of his comedy shows, right? So it was both as a comedian and off, just as he was tweeting.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember just a crowd of people on Twitter just saying that you can't host the Oscars. There's been no evidence, even with your apology, that you have changed. You've never spoken out for or against homophobia. There's no evidence. There's just an apology, and your apology is from now, right?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a question I have, sorry. 'Cause
No problem, speak.
This is a story I was also watching, is that it didn't so much come from the people
Yeah.
demanding him, it's the organization. And people felt like that institution was treating him differently to maybe other hosts and stuff. But
People also.
It was people
It was
also.
people. It was
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
I mean, I tracked the whole story. We did a whole show on
It was actually
so it was
people.
people more
Yeah.
than anything. But what I found problematic was Ellen DeGeneres, who I thought was an activist in her own right, an advocate for LGBT rights and for women, who came on the show and
Invited.
almost sort of expected people to forgive Kevin Hart because he was on the show, right? And what I found problematic about that was that it was not in her capacity to do that. She does not speak on behalf of other black people who have been hurted or who have been hurt by his problematic comments. And I think that by her coming in onto a platform, a big platform, where she thought that she could change the narrative and change Kevin Hart's perception of people, I found that problematic. So I'm going back to your question now. I know I'm circling, but in going back to your question, do people deserve grace? Yes, but only if there is evidence that they are trying to change. So for someone like Kevin Hart, I would not give them that grace, because I haven't seen evidence of you trying to actually become something else in your comedy, in your own personal capacity. An apology doesn't mean that we are now forgiving you. There must be evidence, and there must be a trace of you actually doing something to become or to unlearn your habits or your behaviors.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna move on to Black women's experiences in corporate South Africa. Quite a hot one. I mean, Dr. Cindy Van Zyl on Twitter as well tweeted on it.
Yeah.
It's quite a hot topic. You had a literal write-up on Black women's experiences, especially ones in high positions within corporate. So a couple of things came out of that. One of the things which stood out to me is the whole good black topic, whereas if you don't shake up the table, you are basically seen as a good black. And I want to know, in your personal experience within corporate, do you think transformation is truly happening? Because yes, there are policies, but do you think that transformation is truly happening, or there's an expectation still to be that good black prototype?
I think it's like, for instance, people can work for the same organization and have different experiences, right? So transformation, I think, is happening, but I think what I'm more interested in is that as you employ people as part of your transformation agenda, how well are they fitting into that organization, and also are you using them for the skills that they contribute? I think the reason why it's complicated is that if you talk about something like inclusion, I don't like talking about it in terms of practices and policies, right? We'll get to that. But it's about individual experiences, how people experience a space, a team, the organization. Do they feel like they fit in? At the same time, they don't want to feel like, even though you've hired me because I represent a certain group, I don't want to be the voice for that group. I want you to understand that I've got my individual talents that can be used, but I so happen to be. And also, you never want to have a situation where in transformation you think having one black woman in the leadership is transformation or it's inclusion, because the other thing is, are you representing, it's kind of like in entertainment. You don't want to represent just one kind of black person, right? That's stressful, especially for that black person, because I think you need to humanize certain groups. You need to show them across the spectrum that there are black women who are loud, and that's fine, and that person mustn't feel like they're living up to some kind of stereotype. You are loud, that's okay. There are black women who are quiet, that's fine. There are black women who are somewhere in between. There are black women who are, whatever personality trait. I think us trying to, transform, it can't be done in a shallow way. It's a much deeper thing, and it has to be done in an inclusive way where you are listening to the experiences of the people you already have, and also don't hire people because of a policy reason. I think hire them and genuinely use whatever talent it is that they have, or whatever makes them who they are. Like, for instance, I always think that people hire you because you look great as a representative of the company, but then they want to paint you beige to look like the rest of the company. So the thing that makes you is sort of suppressed so that you can take on the culture of a place. So I think it requires deep introspection from people that lead certain companies. What kind of people do you want to produce here? And I think if companies ask themselves that, they'll be horrified, because there are certain people who, I wanted to use a certain word, but I would be embarrassed to know that they work for my organization because of what they do to other people. So it's consciously saying, what kind of person do I want to represent the organization? But in terms of broader transformation, I do see it happening. I see, more black women in certain careers, but my only concern is that there seems to be a gap. There's a lot in the entry level, and then you get stuck somewhere, and then you exit out, and then it's musical chairs. There'll come another one who'll be there, also stay till that level. I don't know any black woman who's going to retire at a law firm. I don't.
Yeah. And why is that for you?
For me personally, I think it's a different reason, because I've always known that law is a chapter, and I want to do law in different ways, not just in practice. I want to teach. I want to, practice law in a more creative way, that kind of thing. So I knew that being in corporate would be for so long, and then once I feel confident enough, I'd try it out. But for other people, it takes a toll for other people's personal decisions, and that, can you really be a mom and a wife and stick to the grind like this? Is the company accommodating if you're a wife and a mom, in a way that, husbands may not seek the same kind of accommodation, because for them it's kind of like, no, I see this as, my contribution at home, being a working person. But, I think women have their own, I actually don't want to just say women. I think men and women have, as you get older and you go through certain phases in your life, you have certain requirements of how you'd like to work. And if that can't be accommodated, you're going to leave if it doesn't fit into the culture of the thing. Maybe when you were younger, you were willing to be at the office 24/7. But as you get older and you have other responsibilities and things like that, you may want to have a day where you work from home and that kind of thing. Can your company adapt with, how you're growing in life without losing you, but at the same time, trusting you enough that wherever you are, whichever way you work, you'll be able to still make a contribution. So I think it's adaptability of companies. They kind of want you to fit in, and it's their way or no way. So other people are only willing to do that for so long. And also, it's just not dynamic enough to keep people interested until retirement.
A quick one. Oh, sorry. A quick one. Okay, well, I'll ask the question then you, because I just want like a second. I know that we're running out of time. Who is a black woman's biggest threat in corporate South Africa?
Woo!
So answer that in a minute for me, if you could. Who is? I mean, we've got white men, we've got black men, we've got other black women. Give me a
Do you want
concise. What did you do to me on your show?
I made you choose.
So I'm doing the same thing. So, and then we can move on to her, because I want us to quickly
because she actually did research on it.
Okay, I would say incredibly, because I think I can give you a variety of answers, but the one that is almost designed to be one.
Yeah.
The others, I think it happens in terms of how you socialized and
Sure.
survival, and
Sure.
there's other psychology happening.
Sure.
I think it's white men.
Sure.
Because if you look at the genesis of how the private sector works, if you and I were not around the table, if white women were not around the table to design how it is we're going to work, I think I would say white men.
Sure.
Oh, no, awesome. And I think this really links to what I wanted to add, because when Kanye asked the question, why is it that there are so few black women who are at that top level position? When I was doing my research, I actually came across a lot of interesting things. The first is that corporate South Africa hasn't changed nearly in the last 5 years, particularly at your top management level. White men are like at 68%, which is still really, really high. Your black women are at about 7%, if I'm not mistaken. Black men 9%. So we're still really, really in the minority in terms of representation. Now the stats tell you that, but then if you talk to black women, which is what I did to find out what is actually happening, they'll tell you, definitely agreeing with your aspect of adaptability. So there's so few women in these higher positions because they can't adjust to the company culture and it's not willing to accommodate them. The second issue is that black women at that level carry this dual responsibility. You get to executive level, management level, you're expected to reach your targets, I don't know in law, but reach your clients, and you're expected to be this black representative of everyone else. You're expected to be a mentor to everyone else, you know, and I think that's that dual responsibility that a lot of white men don't have. When we talk about who is black women's biggest threat in the space, interestingly enough, I interviewed 9 black women, all working for the top South African banks and other investment companies. All of them said that their biggest sponsors in the corporate sector were white men. And the reason, and it makes sense if you think about it, because if white men have the power, then they're naturally the only ones in that space that can really be your sponsor.
Yeah.
When they did have black men as sponsors, black men would then try to flirt with them or not support them or try to oppress them because of patriarchal stuff. So it's interesting that I think that within the space, and then there's one woman who commented that, how can I run a household but I'm not expected to be able to run a company? How can in apartheid we fought alongside each other for the same freedoms, but now that in the workplace I'm not your equal anymore? So I think as black people in the workplace we have to have that conversation.
I don't want to
How can we do that?
It's weird because I think even at our other conversation, we set it off the record because it can be distracting. But for me, I'm interested in terms of the powers beyond just the company that people work for, as to who's wielding power out there, who's got the keys to the register, what does that person look like, and are they willing to cut a set or give you the space to do that? So I completely understand the issue with the black on black kind of issues, but I think there's a psychology behind that, and if we could learn more about it to understand why we do. And also in law, interestingly enough, there are, I want to say, more black women right now who are graduating, going into law. So the numbers in terms of representation are there. It's just position and also ownership of firms and that kind of thing, equity partners, that kind of thing.
It's the same in accounting. The numbers are there, but once levels go higher, women just disappear almost.
There was an interesting point made in this conversation. It's the last thing I'm going to say. Yeah, definitely. There was an interesting point, but I found it very, I think it really plays into also just, the lack of, transformation maybe we see in terms of the microaggressions which come out within corporate. That, as a man in society, you at home, and there's this, ingrained culture within the home that a woman doesn't have a voice. That she needs to submit, and then you get to corporate, and then your wife doesn't talk back to you.
Biculturalism, we all have to do it. We
Absolutely.
have to split ourselves into two.
Yeah, absolutely.
One person at home, one person at work. It's unfortunate.
Absolutely. No, there's no excuse for it. It's just, I found it very interesting that I think even on a nuclear level, that there's an issue within society that, women aren't given the voices that they are, or not necessarily given, but the reception of women's voices within society is actually problematic as it is. So it sips in corporate in terms of, the culture just spearing
just want to
it.
ask, who's being hired in these positions in we trying to balance the situation? Who gets, because I've got a worry. I don't know, I'm from social movie, from Amanskara, and then the numbers that I see of people on the streets who are not going to school, who are not educated. My question is, who's going to be hired to try and balance the situation? Because the other thing that comes in is then we end up, because and then what we say is that it's a black man's thing. You know, black people are like this. They're failures and what. And they end up taking somebody, putting them in a position for the sake of color to balance that out. And then when and when that person fails, it's gonna be painted like it's black people that are that. Forgetting that this person was not empowered for that position.
Absolutely. That's true. This is a good point. I want us to move to the health conversation. But this is a really good point. That I think, you know, us as an organization as well, we definitely will touch on it, you know, in our future conversations, and as well the work that we're trying to do, because we're looking at employment, we're looking at entrepreneurship as well. So in terms of the health discussion,
you guys had a successful episode as well. I think that Shakira was also quite nervous. She didn't know how receptive people would be to it. But I don't think that people understand that health in itself is also a very important sector. I mean, there's the NHI bill that you guys briefly spoke about. There was the life Isidimeni issue that you guys also touched on. And I just want to find out, maybe update our catalysts, where or how far the NHI bill is now, or what's going on in terms of that, and then also what you wanted people to take out of your conversation.
Guys, I'm gonna be in two places. Currently my passion is moving. I'm in health and I love everything about health, but I'm so moved by the young and education. And this is because without the education and the young, we have nothing else. That's Okay, the NHI bill, the last I read of it was that it was not adopted at cabinet, so it was on hold. Of which it's a letdown if we look at how much money has already been put into the NHI bill, into the trial of it. A lot of money went into it, and now they're just parking the bus. They're tight-lipped, they're not saying anything moving forward about it. Meanwhile, the problems that we're facing within the health are still continuing. Look now, we still have, I'm part of the South African Society of Hospital Institute, SAHIP. I hope I said it right. So we're getting a lot of interns, people who graduated last year. They have to go into internship positions and ComServe positions, and this is across the board, be it medical students or pharmacy students, whom are not placed currently. They don't have positions, and government doesn't have space for them. Those people are not hired, all because of a policy document that says you have to do your ComServe. Now people don't have jobs. Now the government came back and said they will hire a couple of people. There's a bill, a document that came out now, where they said they're going to hire X amount of nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. And guess what? That number is not even enough to cover the issues that we face within health. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, the truth of it as well is that maybe the lawyers and the economists here will tell me we don't have money in the country. That's the truth of it. So we need to think big of how do we generate money for the country going forward, so that we can address issues of education, issues of employment, so that we can deal. The health issue, it doesn't stand alone. It's a big issue.
Yes, definitely.
It doesn't stand alone.
Definitely.
Is it not a mismanagement of the little that we have as well?
It is. It goes back to education as well. It goes back to, because when I look at a lot of people, they take somebody for the sake of who they are or how active. You know, funny enough, my boss the other day said to me, sometimes people are hired because of who can speak the loudest or who can swing the best. You can get into a position, and then you find that's where the mismanagement. There's a hospital that I won't name. It just opened a couple of years ago, and it's a state hospital. And if you look at the records now, it's shocking. It's shocking how come this hospital that just came into the picture now already it's in millions of debt. So it talks to mismanagement of funds as well. But then again, who did you hire in that position to run those things? Yeah, so it's about what is this gentleman who's spilling the beans on everyone?
I don't want to say that.
Agreezy.
So it goes back to are you affiliated with those kind of people? Do you know any of them? I need a job. Get me and then you're placed, and then we find ourselves in the situation that we are in currently. But it's bad.
Can I just ask you something, Jackson? Because I didn't really read what the contents of the NHI bill, but would the NHI bill have covered what's happening currently in South Africa, where we don't get access to health the same? And what I mean about that is that it's a color thing, first and foremost. It's an economic thing. If you are more financially stable, she can go to a doctor, pay 350, or her medical aid will cover certain things. But if I go to a state hospital, there's a line, and what's making me say this also is because Kolani Gwala, who's at 702, was he recently he's a cancer survivor. And he was just speaking about the millions and the money that he actually had to fork out in order to save his own life. And I'm thinking about the ordinary black South African. I'm thinking about people of color who don't have access to health the same way. Because he's a media personality. People wanted to see him alive and wanted to see him get better, and they jumped on that bandwagon, and there was a whole there were funds to that. So what do you think about what's happening in South Africa, the fact that we don't have access to health the same way, but would the bill have covered those disparities? Would they have?
It would have, and unfortunately, if you're not the colonies of this world, you're going down.
Yeah.
That's the truth of the matter. Of recent, there was a gentleman who was with a medical aid. I think it was Bonitas. And they wouldn't pay for his cancer medication. And it's only after the media outcry and people out there on social media crying that they backtracked, and now they said they will pay. Had that not happened, the gentleman will be talking something else right now. And I said it with the previous session as well. I am for the NHI, although it was flawed there and there in the implementation processes. But I am 100% for the NHI because it would give access to those who do not have access. But then at its current state, the way it is, I feel those people who don't have a voice would be left behind.
What's the political barrier to the NHI?
The finances, money.
Okay, that's objective enough.
And I think that we've all had our... did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add, because you said that something you're passionate about is education. And I think that for the viewers who are watching this, a really, really exciting project that I'm doing at work, so I work for the Aurum Institute, is one where, because in essence, South Africa is not reaching its HIV targets. So the 90-90-90 targets, where in your very high priority HIV areas, 90% of people there must know their status. Of the 90% who are found positive, 90% of them must be on medication. Of that 90% must be consistently on treatment. So we're not reaching those targets, and we've got a lot of healthcare organizations that do health system strengthening. So they're working in the clinics to help reach those targets, get patients ready. But we don't have enough resources in the clinics. So what we've done is that we've realized that there's a link between high levels of HIV and high levels of youth unemployment. Because very often disenfranchised young people engage in high-risk behavior. So we've created a program where unemployed young people can come and apply for this program. And using the whole alignment to the government's YES initiative, we're able to put young people onto internships where they're then able to get work experience in the clinics, assisting the clinic in reaching targets, and then after a year, develop skills, and then after a year we find them permanent employment with SMMEs. So it's been exciting to see how it works. So for young people listening, please go onto the website www.unlocked, I think, I think that's the
Yes,
website.
yes.
And then
With a D.
with a, yes, with a D, no ED. And please apply and get all your papers there, because the more of you come, then the more we can really combat these two issues together.
So Farai, what you're touching on, it's very important. And you know, the biggest problem with this is that we never have, because of capacity, we end up not reaching those people at the corner there who really need those services. So, and I said it even last time, that it's upon us. We, for instance, last year, I think we had a campaign where we went into the communities. The 1990, for us to achieve the 1990, the first start is for people to know their status. So if they don't know their status, we can't even say we want 90% of the people to be virally suppressed in their viral load. So that's the problem. So we need to go out there to where people are.
Absolutely.
Where people are. There was a pastor who had a church in a tavern. So he understood that people drink alcohol and they still need God. Let me take God to them in the shebeen, and then we'll pray there, and while we drink alcohol, because I can't get them to go to church. So same concept. We can't get people to come to the clinics, mainly because